Lana Shlafer is a mindset coach, a law of attraction expert, and author of the best-selling book, Manifest That Miracle. And we talk about exactly that, how to really build and cultivate a mindset that manifests real miracles in your life. And what I love about Lana is she really keeps it real. Sometimes you hear about manifestation and miracles and it's very out there. What I really love about this conversation with Lana is she really brings it back to this very tangible space. Over the past decade, Lana has empowered thousands of people to manifest what seems out of reach. And that could be, crossing 7 figures in your business, healing an illness, meeting your partner. She has such a beautiful personality and aura about her. And she really, being that she actually, fun fact, was born in Siberia, she has this very sort of directness about her where she's like very kind of no BS coaching. You know that that's totally my vibe. So I really appreciate that about her. Lana has also been featured in lots of well-known publications such as Forbes, TVOne, NPR. She also studied at UC Berkeley. So this woman is definitely a smarty pants, okay? She knows her stuff. And you can tell just by the way that she talks about things. I mean, I've got to say, I really just enjoyed this episode with her. I learned quite a bit of especially just new ways to think about things, just opened up some windows for me. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. All right, Lana Shlafer, I am so excited to have you on the show today. So excited that we found each other. And I'm even more thrilled and stoked that we're going to be talking about manifesting miracles today, one of my favorite topics to jam out about. So welcome, Lana. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I always smile when people talk about the word manifesting or even the title of my book, because I'm such a skeptic. I chose it because it makes me chuckle, because it's such like a manifest that miracle. I mean, it's such a tall order,
Totally.
I'm all about leaping high. So here we go.
Yeah. And what's really great, you're really going to bring a whole new light to this topic. And that's what I'm really excited about, because I know that you have exercises, you have techniques, you have tools, and I'm really excited for the listeners to learn from you today. But before we dive into all that juicy goodness, I am curious to know, Lana, what would you say is the biggest miracle that you've personally manifested in your life?
It's so hard to choose. It's almost like I usually ask what area of life, but I'll tell you the biggest miracle that really made me own the word miracle, because before that I was into mindset manifesting. I come from Russia originally, so I have no religious background. I'm Jewish, but I was atheist. Like everybody in communism was atheist. And so I came to these concepts really skeptically, but I started utilizing them. Then I went to grad school for therapy and I taught yoga for many years. And I went from the investment banking world to this sort of new age world with my skeptical self. And then in the middle of grad school, my now husband proposed. And a month later, we found out we're pregnant with twins. And so that was like a boom, 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 boom. And I never really thought about like what kind of birth I would want. I mean, I assumed that I would want a natural birth, but I really wasn't like a super advocate. I was more on the, eat vegetarian for many years side and more, I guess, health conscious. But everything kicked into high gear for me because I had to really think about how do I want to bring these kids into the world. And so I feel like all of the practices and ideas and principles that I've been studying, we've been going to Agape for many years. Michael Beckwith Spiritual Center, we used to work there or like volunteer. And all of a sudden, all of these principles became very real because having twins in the US is quite a medicalized affair, even though I was completely healthy, but I was almost 30. And then, so the doctors were telling me, nope, you're going to have to do this. You're gonna have to do this. And I was like, whoa. Like, where did this come from? So I had to really put these principles to the test. And long story short, I write the full story out on my blog and in my book as well. But we ended up having a birth over 6 days. So we manifested an incredible midwife who ended up living with us from the day my water broke to the day the second twin came out was 6 days. Wow. And they were born 33 hours apart. So they have different birthdays. Yes. And there were
Whoa.
many, many steps on those 6 days that
33 hours
yes.
apart.
Yep.
Holy
Yep.
whoa, girl.
Yep. And it was so incredible too, because I never felt in danger at any point. Like we had a hospital 10 minutes away. We were totally fine, but there were many points there that I just didn't see a way. Like when my son came out and then my daughter turned sideways, which is transverse. And that's the one position you can't birth like naturally vaginally. You have to have a C-section. And it just, I can't even explain the full synchronicities because there are so many steps that I have to go to. But long story short, I ended up speaking with a therapist in Germany who is also a psychic who a friend connected me with. And in 30 minutes, she helped me turn my daughter around and get engaged. Like, I'm just telling you, things happen that in retrospect, I could not believe. And I sort of spent the next couple of years after their birth really understanding, like I was in such an aligned and connected space.
Yeah.
And I had known these things to be possible at some level, but I had lived it in a way that mattered more to me than I can imagine. And the sort of underbelly of this, that people want to talk about miracles and manifesting. Yeah, we have this awesome house, awesome this. But what they don't know is that I used all the ninja visioning techniques to free myself of fear.
That's what I was going to ask you because I was curious. I'm like, okay, how did you cause and create all of that?
Yeah. A big part of it was I'm a big visionary person. I take action pretty easily. I would say I used to be more type A. So the difficulty for people like me is not to have big visions and to take action. The difficulty is to have things go not as expected and have the setbacks and the resistance and the contrast and not be prepared for them. It's like we're not planning for it because we're like, we got this, let's go, we'll figure it out. In the middle, I'm like, oh no. What did I do? Right. So with the birth, what I did really well, and it's a huge principle in my book, is that I really worked on the lower scale of the emotion. So I don't know if you know, Abraham Hicks has a 22 emotional guidance scale, the 22 step. And they talk about on the lower ladder of the scale, you have powerlessness and like anger and sadness and depression. And then you go up and you move towards the pro-social emotions like connection and love and freedom. And I really didn't love this hierarchical description of emotions because when I was in grad school, I was in a really progressive program, transpersonal psychology. I really understood that all emotions not only have a value, but they have a real message and a gift. And so 100%. None of them are good or bad. Like you cannot even categorize them that way. And so I renamed it as a keyboard where the lower notes are the lower notes like on a piano and the higher notes are higher. And to create a masterpiece, you really need to play them all. You cannot just like be like, I'm just going to play these 2 octaves. And this is not how Mozart wrote his, symphonies. This is not what creates.
I have to say, Lana, I love everything you're saying. I hope everyone listening right now writes that down and remembers that analogy. I've never heard it as a piano, that it's part of making the music of your life, that it's part of melody. It's part of, and I always say like beauty is in the contrast, right? We need to find the beauty in the contrast. And actually one thing that Esther Hicks says is, that all of our light potentials are born from darkness.
Exactly.
Like literally. And if we think about it, we would not, if you're in a dark, sad place right now, you would not have the rocket of desire, as she says, for something different. Right. So it's like appreciating that.
In that place, if there wasn't a clear message and a transformation and a change that you need to receive.
Yes.
Right. I spent many times in the hot seat with Abraham, and my last conversation with them was about the value of contrast and variety, which is where we went to. It's like the word resistance and contrast doesn't even sort of fit anymore in my terminology. It's more like variety. It gives me an opportunity to reflect. The Abraham went on to like the tapestry of, diversity or whatever it was. But when you really own that and you realize no notes are bad. Yes. All notes are good. As a matter of fact, it's like all cards are good. Like a great poker player will play every card. There are no bad cards. It's how you play them, right? And 100%. So this idea really came to life when I would be gripped by fear. What if something happens to me? What if something happens to one of the kids? You anyway have hormones and things that are happening for the first time. But with twins, I can't remember the percentages, but like the risk of something happening to one of the twins is huge. Like 20%. Like I had to be mentally ready. And that's where my tough Russianness came in. I was like, all right, we're going to go into this. We're going to ready. So I did, and I don't recommend this for anyone. Please do not start this immediately. But when you get practiced at these techniques, I had visualizations where I'd imagine one or more of the twins dying or me dying. And I lived through it because I wasn't willing to have that looming back of the mind fear be my subconscious driver. And those energies are manifesting on my behalf. And I really wanted to own them. And I say, if you own your story, if you own your energy, it doesn't own you anymore.
Okay. So I want to draw, and I'd love to hear from you on this. What's the line then between worrying, right? Worrying versus what you just did, which was a visualization of that possible potential that exists.
Because people are like, it's so negative. Why would you think of negative things? And I'm like, it's not what you're thinking about. It's how it feels. And I was feeling empowered. And I was feeling connected, because when you really go into the worst case scenario of something like that, which again, I don't do that for everything, but I really needed to own this because it was gripping me. It was limiting me. It was bringing so much fear to my day-to-day life. And that anxiety is way worse than if the chance that it were to happen. Right. And so many people are willing to pay the cost of anxiety and depression and repression and all the Essions where you are not allowing yourself. Right. And so the difference is how it feels. And so what I work on with people, because they'll read the book and they'll be like, this is amazing, but ultimately you do need to practice this. And if you have a coach, a mentor, somebody who do this with it, obviously is easier. It's how it feels. So when you think about something that, we were all in COVID times, right? So at those times, people are saying, well, I'm not going to focus on the fact that there's a lockdown and I'm limited and I'm this. And I'm like, that's great. And if you can really let it go and focus on something else, woohoo, go in that direction. Yes. But if in the back of your mind, it's taking your bandwidth to like 10, 20% of your energy is really having that low level anxiety that becomes normalized for a lot of people, that's the time where I would want to hit it head on and be like, all right, let's think through this. What if this hand is dealt? How am I going to play it so that I win?
I love that. And there's a chapter in my book, I call it Face the Ugly. And it's literally this, being willing to shine light on the darkness is the only way that we will ever overcome it.
When you bring light, darkness dissipates.
Exactly. So it's like we're making machines. Like these are all actually neutral events, right? We put the charge on them. So what is the charge that we're putting on them? And if it's a negative charge, like you said, based on how you're feeling in your body. Yeah. Do you have like an exercise that you could share with, because I know this for my audience, I've had people reach out and say like that they are in anxiety, which obviously is a reflection of me because I used to have severe anxiety disorder. That was a real thing for me. Like 5 years ago, I was popping pills every day. So I tend to attract a lot of women who have that anxiety, like gripping them, that fear. So do you have like a helpful tool or exercise that these women can go through and take themselves through?
I do, but let's start with going to the root. Anxiety is a symptom, not the root. So what do you feel, if you're open to sharing in a general sense, was the root of the pattern of the response was anxiety? But what was the stimulus? What was the inner, you can call it your formative life experience, your belief systems, your trauma, if you want. I use the word trauma very liberally because I feel like we need to really own that. Yeah. All pain comes from trauma. It doesn't mean that you were severely abused or it was, a war zone. It just means that it was traumatic to you and it impacted you in a way to develop defense mechanisms, which were brilliant and necessary and important, vital at that time. And they may not be serving you where you want to head.
Yes. And that's the question to ask you. And I'm going to share with you what one of mine was, is really like knowing that these moments in our lives, they don't need to define us, that they're not actually us. And we're able to identify the source, the root, like you said, we can separate ourselves from it, right? And say, hey, that's not mine.
Let me give you my perspective, which I'm
let's hear it.
I have a challenger, whatever, Enneagram, right? Or I have like the wing of a challenger. So I tend to challenge everything. So excuse my bluntness.
Please do.
Because I feel like you really can't separate yourself from anything. And I'll tell you my take on it. when you fully receive the value of it, you connect with the essence of what it was there to bring you. So if anything, it is reconnecting to the initial creation, through the cracks, the light enters. That's a Rumi quote, right? It's like that. This is the crack which created the opening. I bet for you, those formative experiences led you to become who you are.
Absolutely.
So how can you separate the pain from the gain? Right. And this is, so it's more semantic than anything. The truth is, when you feel like there's nothing that you need to separate from or resist, you move out of the binary duality experience and you move into the oneness, which is very difficult to talk about in practical terms because we live in a world of contrast. We live in a world of different colors and different gradations of things and ones and twos and threes, right? There isn't a oneness that we can sort of put our language to even, except we've all experienced it at some point. It's that feeling of connection where in that moment, there's isness and there's nothing that went wrong. There's nothing that is needing to be created. There's a moment of wholeness or isness that is present moment oneness. And so from those formative, so I have in chapter 4, I have the formative life experiences exercise where you go through and you pick your 3 most challenging, most painful experiences, and you do this exercise, and you go through your 3 most highlight successes, like miraculous experiences. And what all the people end up, telling me afterwards, I'm like, I know, is that they identified that the most painful experiences gave them this desire that was not met, a need that was not, and their most successful experiences met that need. So there you start to get to the root, and the root is very simple. It's really, there are variations of this word and there are variations of this idea, but it's very simple. At some point, you did not feel safe to be yourself. You did not feel welcome. You did not feel seen. You did not feel understood and valued and worthy as a being, as a human. And so that is really a core wound. And you're going to spend the rest of us, all of us are going to spend the rest of our lives. And this is another thing that I bring up. And I'm so glad I have the therapy training, because you are never going to get away from your wounds. Accept them, that they are going to be your portals. Each time you go deep enough, they're going to be your portals to the next level. So you can actually recognize that and be like, all right, there goes that abandonment again. I'm really at that level. I'm at the next level of portal. Or there goes that feeling of unworthiness again, or whatever it may be for you. It is always for us.
Always. Doesn't happen to you, happens for you. Everything. So I want to say, I love what you said, tying it back to wholeness, tying it back to connectedness, and saying like, hey, this is part of me. This is part of my journey. It's made me who I am today, having that appreciation. I think it's interesting, right? Because it's like, language is interesting because it can be like, you can spin things any types of ways. I think for me, when I thought of separation, but I love it. My whole mantra, my whole driving macro mission is oneness. So I love that you brought it there. It like, I totally align with everything that you just said. It's for me, separating the meaning that I attach to it.
And it's like
right?
a witnessing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
that you can step out. The story isn't all of you.
Yes, the story. So that's the part, right? It's separating out that meaning, that story that's not serving you, that at that point in your life, you didn't know any better, but that's the story that you created, right? That is no longer serving you, may have served you for some time in some sort of ways, as everything does in some ways. But like, that's really for me, like when I went back, for me, it was my relationship with my mother. It was very turbulent. So I was always gripping the steering wheel, right? It was like, I didn't know if she was going to be happy with me or she was going to be really upset with me. And I never knew. Right. So that for me was something that I went in doing the deep work, was a huge root that I got to identify and like create a self-serving story, right? Not one that actually holds me back, but one that actually, like you said, transforms that into purpose, into power. Yeah.
And, so, in their terminologies in psychology, like insecure attachment, right? So that means that you did not have enough consistency to feel safe, essentially. And the people that did, nobody gets it perfectly. So that's the thing. We all have degrees of codependence. We all have so like these terms, when people make them like this charged bad thing that they got to get away from, there's, this narcissistic pattern, a codependent pattern. I mean, there is a purpose to them because I think it identifies something that was unnamed before.
Yeah.
But as soon as you push against something, as soon as you make this bad, it has to hurt you.
It has power over you.
It has power over you. Mm-hmm. And as soon as, so I say in the book that resisting resistance creates more resistance.
Yes.
And embracing resistance creates more embracing.
Yes. Oh, I say what we resist persists.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we resist the resistance. It's literally piling darkness on top of darkness.
Right. Well, it's funny because you get into these spiritual, law of attraction worlds and people feel like they have a magic wand. And I'm like, the best use for your magic wand is not to beat yourself up over the head with it, but go and create out there. But it does come. So we talked about anxiety and all of these symptoms. Like I had eating disorders when I was younger, and there were lots of like reasons for when it sort of came up for me. My parents got divorced. My brother was going through stuff. Like it was a lot of, factors that brought it together. And the root was that I did not feel like I could even, I don't even know what the word is. I didn't feel safe within myself, not because of external forces, but because I had not had an example of what it's like to feel safe. I was with parents who came from Russian immigrants and were triggered and traumatized, and that trauma got passed on, even though I was living a life that was supposed to be like the answer to their prayers. I was traveling around the world, having 6-figure salaries at 23. I was like, I had everything, but the traumatized me was very much present. And so the root of it was that I had to create a connection with myself. And it is a relationship that I had no idea could exist. And then I was mostly mad at, afraid of myself, or, like in some way wanting to not be me. So that was a very tumultuous relationship. And when you fight within yourself, the various parts of you, you lose. No matter which part wins, you lose. If you don't spend the first formative years of your life creating an inner harmony between yourself with all the voices that you have and all the personalities and all the desires, if there isn't a harmony, that inner turmoil will manifest in your relationships, in your career, in your experiences. And so it's amazing. People do feel like it's miraculous when they do that inner healing and they create the sense of harmony within them. It's almost if by magic their reality reflects it, but it's not magic. It's you.
Yes.
You created it.
Yes. Yes. So good. So good. The world within us will create the world around us. I don't know if you've read this book. I'm reading it right now, The Way of the Warrior.
I think I read it. Is it by Dan? No, that's Peaceful Warrior.
No, it's like McMarrin, I think is the last name. McMarrin.
No.
Anyways, I'm reading it now. I'm not even halfway through, but this is one of the things he talks about is that internal battle, right?
Yep.
Like we're literally making parts about us wrong. It's like, you ever hear like even people saying like, fuck my ego, like, know, and just saying like, oh, F fear, things like that. And you're like, wait a minute, right? Like that's not harmony. That's not inner peace. Like if it's resistance. And that
we weren't taught, especially, I have to say that Americans specifically aren't really taught how to have more nuanced discussions and disagreements that feel maybe conflictual to them. It was a lot of times brushed under the rug and not viewed as appropriate in like sort of the American culture. Europeans are a little bit more brazen about it. Yeah. And they're comfortable being in conflict would be too strong of a word, but unresolved or in disagreement. But what happens is there are going to be times when you're going to be unresolved within yourself. It's okay. It's okay if this part is coming up and, the part of you that maybe wanted to have security and wanted to have this job and it's happy that it has that. And there's another part that wants more freedom and creativity. It's okay if there's going to be a period. It's kind of like a relationship. Are you always going to agree on everything? No, you
Mm-hmm.
have to learn how to, and I don't believe in compromise. I always say I believe in creativity, not in compromise, but that's what you sort of have to do. You have to bring both of these parts to the table and say, look, I don't want you to hurt. I don't want you to hurt. I don't want any one of us to be losing. How can we work together as a team to create something that's beyond any one of the parts? Again, this goes to relationships. My next book is going to be on relationships, because I feel like this is what people don't understand, is that the we includes fully the two me's, or the multiple me's if you're a multiple family unit. If any part of the me for any individual gets excluded in the we, then that is not a holistic we. Ideally, it is something more than you would be on your own. My husband is so different. He might as well be an alien. He's such a different, like the way he thinks about things. He's Filipino. He's got this whole total like Confucian attitude on things, which I do not. And us together is greater than me by myself and him by himself. That's where the we includes. We're not trying to make each other like each other. We're learning and growing from each other. And there is unresolved things at times. There are challenges, there are disagreements. And the more that we can normalize these discussions and coming to the resolution that is expansive for each element. That's when you're creating masterpieces beyond what you imagined.
So powerful, and so true. It literally is the relationship that you have with yourself. And what's really interesting too is that relationship and the way that you deal with conflict within yourself, which will happen regardless, because we are human after all. It is actually, you can look at how do you deal with conflict in your relationship. It's very reflective. It's 100%. Very reflective. And so I love that. And I love being able to look at the union. I truly believe that 1 + 1 = 3. There is something powerful that happens from
5.
that union. Equals 300. I love it. Okay. So I would love to, I know we're nearing that like flew by. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, we're already nearing the end of the episode. No. Okay. So Lana, I'm really curious to know too. I love that you identified, and that was very important. You identified that these are symptoms, right, of something deeper, like that, like anxiety and these things that we talked about. What is an exercise or a tool, maybe one of your favorites from your book, that a listener right now could write down, take notes, and implement right away with themselves?
Yeah. So you can obviously get the full detail from the book, audiobook, paperback,
which I will link in the show notes for you guys.
The formative life experience is a good one because it'll help you go through your most formative experiences and sift out the core desire that you have essentially for your life, that it will change and sort of, there's elements to it that you'll focus on at one point or another. So identifying your core desired feeling, core intention, whatever you want to call it, is key. But then when we're talking about day-to-day sort of, oh, by the way, when you do have that core desire intention, I also recommend choosing themes for the year. At the end of the year, I always do a manifesting ceremony. And the biggest piece of it that people love is we come up with a theme that lights you up. It has to be something that gets you, and I call it your North Star. And it comes down to every decision. Do I feel like doing an interview with Ashley today? Does it feel like my core desire intention? For 2021, for me, it's actually and in Russian for me, which is my first Russian theme, Отдохни и поиграй, which means go rest and play. Last year was so crazy and busy for me. So yes, this feels like theme. Rest and play. And so I make every decision based on, does this align with my theme? And I say no, which is a whole other sort of training, right? How to say no that keeps you in alignment versus pushing against other people. So I that's one way to apply this clarity that you would get from your core design intention to your day-to-day. But another exercise is gratitude, right? Everyone knows the power of gratitude. We could also link, I have an amazing 5-minute gratitude exercise that will essentially be what we're doing now, but I guide you through it. And I call it progressive gratitude in my book, because most people start with gratitude in 2 ways. One is they overshoot and they go to somewhere that feels totally impossible. And like, they're like, I'm grateful for the $1 million in my bank account, or I'm grateful. And they are so far away from that feeling. So they're doing sort of a visioning gratitude, but they don't have a bridge to it. It doesn't feel real. It's sort of like fantasy more than it is a feeling of expansion from where you are. The other way that people do it is very like mechanically, right? They're just like, oh, I'm grateful for like eyes to see and food to eat. And they're like, yeah, I'm grateful. Like they don't feel it in their bones. So the progressive gratitude is starting where you are. So I recommend people to actually start where they are and name it. Like, I am anxious. I am anxious today. I am worried about, I don't know, whatever it might be worried. So you have to begin. It's like a GPS. Acknowledge where you are. So the GPS system knows where you are, then program in where you want to go and then follow the route. But don't try to tell the GPS that you're already over there. It completely disorients the entire guidance, right? So starting where you are, let's say you start with I'm anxious, and then look for 1 degree shifts. I really believe that 1 degree shifts is what creates a 180-degree turnaround. So look for an ounce of relief, an ounce, like something like, you know what, I'm anxious, but you know, I'm so glad that I have this amazing meal that my partner made. And that just like makes me feel a little bit more calm. Or I'm anxious and I know that, but I don't have the 10 clients I want, but I love this one client, this one. So you focus on the 1 degree relief, and really at the lower notes of that emotional keyboard, it is going to be more about relief and like nurturing and exhale more than some like off the wall enthusiasm and clarity and bliss. Like, how do you find your clarity and your purpose and your brilliance and your bliss? You got to move up the scale and play all the notes. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, my purpose was to write the symphony, this masterpiece. Oh, okay. But you can't, like, in the middle of experiencing some of the conflicts within yourself and the depression, anxiety, whatever it might be, and jump to already seeing the whole picture with a bird's eye view. So the progressive gratitude would take you from I'm feeling anxious, I'm overwhelmed, to one thing. Like for me, living by the ocean, I showed you my view earlier. I could live on a shack as long as I have view of the ocean. I look at it and I'm like, the ocean is my friend. I just exhale automatically. So I'm grateful for the ocean. And then maybe I'm overwhelmed with 10,000 projects or whatever. I will focus on what will feel a little bit more relief. And before you know it, the more that you take these 1 degree shifts, you will feel so much better and you'll be able to get to a real meaningful gratitude. And that's when you've actually moved the needle. That's when you're doing the work at shifting your homeostasis, because all of us ultimately go back to sort of the norm where we are. We can be a little bit happier, a little bit sadder temporarily. But if you want to raise your sort of home plate, that's the work that you need to be doing, is starting where you are, meticulously, lovingly looking for relief, looking for softness, looking for something that feels a little bit better and not
within
overshooting. And 2 things that happen when you do that. One is it just feels good. It's better to go gentler. Like it is easily integratable. It's easily digestible. So like taking a bite you can chew versus stuffing your mouth where you can't even take it all in, right? The other part is that because it feels so much easier, it makes you want to keep doing it. So people love doing these exercises because they're gentler, but they are so impactful over time. The value is over time. And that's why it feels easy. You're like, wow, this isn't like this crazy challenging, I got to jump 20 steps to get over there. I really feel like that ricochets for most people and creates like a whiplash where they don't even want what they manifested. It came at such a cost or with some sort of sacrifice. And at that point, it's like, what's the point of creating this
And then
thing?
that's a pattern you're going to keep creating, literally. Yep.
Exactly.
I love that. And I love acknowledging the starting point. I mean, what is the point if you're not ever acknowledging where you are and making that kind of subtle shift, which especially I'm going to say right now, for anyone who has been in a funk, like we know what a funk feels like everyone goes through that.
Yeah.
Like in a funk, there is literal resistance there to go to like going to that far out vision, which yes, you get to create. And when you're in a funk, it's like when you just do that subtle shift, like what you said, like that one small thing that you can actually truly authentically appreciate right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
can just like, it's like moving that needle a little more in that direction that you really want to go, in a way that's actually acknowledging and embracing and appreciating where you are right now, instead of resisting. What we resist persists. We just talked about that.
And it will make you appreciate sort of the season. Now I'm in Puerto Rico, so there's really no seasons. But when I used to live in seasons, it's like, do you really want to spend the entire winter wishing it was summer and resisting and being upset that, or can you really embrace that? Like that funk, that is your winter. There's a lot of things that are being created in your subconscious that you are processing, integrating, hibernating in, that will come to fruition in the spring and the summer. We're a culture that just wants the summertime.
Yeah.
And it is so skewed. And then you're not really honoring the entire process and the rhythm of life that we can't disconnect from. So I'm a big proponent of like, really learn to honor these rhythms as a woman in your cycle, rhythms in your life. There will be seasons. You can really embrace each season. You can really enjoy each one.
I love that. And I like that you brought in like female cycles too. I used to have a lot of resistance, and like, I just hated when my period would come. Now I'm like, and even when I do have like that resistance pop up when I get like cramps, which is actually pretty rare for me now, like I'm with it, like I'm just being with that and like letting that be okay.
Asking me to slow down. It's actually the most creative time.
That's what I was just going to say. So that's literally what I was just going to say. I took the words out of my mouth. That's now, like, I actually am excited when I get my, like that time of the month, my moon cycle. I'm literally like, okay, yay. Like, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going to pop up for me. Like, I wonder what I'm going to create, because it's true. That is our like, that's when we're really exploding in our creativity as women. So I don't know, that just popped up for me as you were sharing about, even for women, honoring our cycles, honoring our seasons. Absolutely. Like, we don't need to be in this resistance.
Don't know what it even feels like to have relief. Like for some people, their creativity would be, they go write whatever. For me, that time of the month, I want that red tent experience, where I go and connect with other women in a meaningful way. So I note my times of the cycle. I know what I need to do is clear my schedule and go meet with a girlfriend or go do some of that kind of, so like everyone has different needs. And that's another part that I think people don't understand, is that the same thing won't feel nurturing or loving or wonderful or like relief to everyone. For somebody, going to dance feels like relief. And for somebody, it's watching a movie and going to the ocean or going surfing or and it is about discovering what that is for you. And I won't stop until I discover what actually feels like relief. If it's not this, or it's not this, or it's not this, I'm going to keep looking for it. And that's what I really encourage people to do, is to get to know themselves. What works for me or for you may not work for someone else. And that's the beauty, that we are all different, but there is something. And I think just knowing that was a really big game changer for me, like 20 years ago. I was like, oh, so there is a way for me to actually feel whole and feel like myself and be nurtured. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to keep looking for it. And now I found, gazillion ways, and we'll keep finding new ways.
And I like that I feel like the way that you shared is such a present moment way.
Yeah.
Because then we can get lost in the looking, right? Where there's always like looking and looking, but what I really love is that is a very present moment shift that you can make. It's not like you have to like spend all this effort and energy in the looking and the seeking, it's literally right in front of you. Like, it's something that's right in front of you right now, right in the now. Yeah.
It has to be that 1 degree, and 1 degree is accessible to everyone.
Powerful. Thank you for that, Jem. I hope all y'all listening took notes and wrote that down. Look at me. I'm starting to embrace that I'm in like Carolinas now, and I'm like, I like using my y'all. I just moved to North Carolina.
I'm going to break out my Spanish over here in a minute. We're influenced by our environment. But again, that's also a part of choosing environments. I interviewed like a feng shui expert on my podcast, and she talked about like changing your home with the seasons, with these intentions and all that. And it's like so amazing that you can literally be molded by your environment when you choose it deliberately.
Yes. Right? Intentionally, deliberately. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I am like, this was such a value-packed episode. Thank you, Lana. I have one question that I asked. This is by the way, you're on my Female on Fire series, which is a series I'm going to go for 11 episodes, but I was like, this is too much fun. I love having girl talk. This is the best. I love like interviewing females on fire. Like, this is awesome. So, I have one question that I always ask every female that comes on for this series. And it is, what is one thing that comes to you that you used to dim, hide, maybe even shame, push away, resist about you, that you have since embraced, reactivated, and reignited on your journey to becoming the female on fire that you are today?
It's my voice. It's expressing myself fully. It was something that really felt like brought people around me pain when I was young. And so it was a really deep wound that just by my existence and by expressing who I am, that would hurt people, hurt my parents, hurt my siblings. And so that was a lot of rework that I've done over the years. And even now when we get in a fight with my husband, I'm like, I know you don't want me to be expressing, but people pay me thousands of dollars to do this. So I have owned this. I have owned this gift, is to speak my truth and to speak my fullest expression, whatever it is, my voice, like using my voice. I always say I paint with words. I'm not a singer. I'm not a painter. I love to dance, but it's really being able to self-express fully is a huge part of what wasn't allowed and wasn't welcomed and created a lot of tension in my life. And the more that I own it, it's an ongoing journey. Like I said, I feel like there will always be like those edges. And as soon as I come to that edge, I know it's a portal into that next level for me. It's really that self-expression. I can't imagine anything more meaningful to me that by me expressing who I am and loving how I love, it can transform somebody else's life and light up the world.
Absolutely. I love that. That's beautiful, Lana. Thank you. And I completely relate to that. That's one of my big ones. Actually, I think when I answered this in the very first the pilot for this season, I said self-expression. Yeah. So that was something that I absolutely I was bullied growing up. So I really just felt completely rejected, and then thereby rejected myself. Wouldn't even give myself a chance to express myself. So I love it. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your heart and your spirit with us. It is so felt. I just love you instantly. And I love that you even like came with like this new perspective and like challenged that one part of the episode. That was really cool. Cause I love that. I
Full
just love,
self-expression here.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So good. So good. So I am going to put all of the things in the show notes that, of course, like your Instagram, your website. Is there anything else that you want me to put down there for the listeners?
We'll put a link to, you can get the first 3 chapters of the book for free on my website, and you can get it everywhere, every store. And also let's link the gratitude exercise because it's such a powerful way to do that progressive gratitude. So I feel like it's a 5-minute exercise. I'm all about short because with 3 kids, I'm like, I do not have 50 minutes for this. How about 5? So you could try it out for yourself and then let me know how you feel after this actual way of progressing into that new level for yourself. Because that just makes me so happy when people connect and let us know that something jumped out. I mean, I hope that this is the beginning of a dialogue and a conversation that keeps on going.
Yes. Screenshot, share, post. Let's keep the dialogue flowing. And yes, what a gift. So thank you for sharing that gratitude process. I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes. And thank you again for sharing your energy and your wisdom with us today. And ladies, we'll see you on the next episode.